Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about what I term as the wildcard effect. Now, in a world of merit, and let's do the best we can do with what we've got, in a world of merit, there's always a wildcard effect, as I refer to it. Meaning that you're not pre-controlling all outcomes. For example, in say employment situations today, affirmative action and diversity, equity, inclusion play a big role. So the people look, well, we've got to have 30% black lesbians, so we have to hire a black lesbian. Well, we can't find a black lesbian that is in any way qualified or competent. It doesn't matter. The priority is to tick that box in the race and gender and whatnot quotas, and we have to do that. That is now the priority. So this means the wildcard effect is heavily neutralized because there's no merit involved. Instead of hiring the best quality person, you're not sure what they can deliver in terms of skills or abilities or capabilities and knowledge, but when you're willfully hiring the least qualified simply to tick an affirmative action employment quota box, then you're producing a controlled outcome, but there's no wildcard. Now, there is a potential wildcard effect in so much as the black lesbian who's totally unqualified and has a low IQ may turn out to be an unexpected sort of genius, but the likelihood of that is far less than the meritoriously hired person making a positive contribution. Also, in terms of business organizations, say public-private partnerships between government and the private sector, if you see or investigate some of those agreements that are made with the government and the private sector organization, particularly in areas of, say, construction and infrastructure and other areas, many other areas, it could be services to deliver equity programs for black lesbians or something like that, that they're typically very generously funded. And we can see examples of this in the recent cases in the United States, in Minnesota, where the Somali community ripped off billions from the taxpayer on fraudulent schemes. But the need or the lust for controlled outcomes was what drove, if you like, was the genesis of all this sort of stuff. But in the public-private partnerships, there's a toll road. Let's say a toll road, for example. If you read the agreement, you'll see that the government is agreeing that the company that's building the road, the private company that's supposedly going to be more efficient than if the government does it, which is a bit of a stretch. But the private company is saying, well, you have to guarantee us a certain level of profit. We want a 20% return on funds invested, for example. Whatever the rate is, it's higher than that, I think. But we want 20% return on the funds employed. And if we don't get that, if not enough people use the toll road, or if there's political sensitivity to us raising the fees for using the toll road, if we don't get the profit level we want, then you, the government, have to steal taxpayers' money and give it to us to make sure, to guarantee that we have the profit return that we demand before we enter into this deal. So the government, the Western governments all over, not just in Australia but elsewhere, and whether it's infrastructure, building roads or building sewers or water treatment plants or anything at all, these companies are demanding a profit level, and again not a competitive profit level, but a very profitable profit level, and they're demanding that they be guaranteed that. So they're not competing, they're not having to deliver a certain quality. They're not guaranteeing a quality of service delivery. There is some of that, but they're not held to what you call a high bar, but they are demanding this return no matter what. So once they've got the return they want, the 20% on funds employed, they can then work in the back room to cut costs and make sure that they only employ people from India, that they offshore jobs to some third world shithole country and so on. So there's no social contract guarantees to go with it. And these businesses are demanding monopoly level profits and getting them Who pays for that? Well, the Western citizens are paying for it without their agreement or consent, and various other various other deals and so on. A government cosy contract government are making, no matter where you look, and particularly in things like building and infrastructure and construction, because given what's going on, it's very easy to bury and launder money in these sorts of service. Recently the government department in Australia spent nearly $100 million on upgrading their website. No one can explain where that money went or what it produced or delivered, but the cosy contract there, it wasn't a competitive bid. So in order to produce, where I'm going with this, in order to produce controlled outcomes that suit their friends and suit their politically aligned buddies, and it's cronyism on a nuclear scale, then controlled outcomes are the only way to deliver that. The same way that the only way to deliver equity, as they quite falsely claim it is, as to how many black lesbians go to Harvard or Oxford University in Britain or so on. The only way to do that is through controlled outcomes. Now, the merit-based outcome, and I'll use an example of when World War II began. There was a lot of the army. The armies were maybe 200,000 people in the armed services, top to bottom. 250,000 or something like that, but they suddenly needed 5 million people in the armed services. So you've got to hire 4.7 million people very quickly. Now, some of these people may have, for example, a mechanic has expertise in fixing and servicing engines, and whether there's an engine, whether it's on a ship or a tank or a jeep or something like that, then those people have that expertise. But there was a need to have millions of people with expertise, whether it's operating guns or it's operating ships or it's fixing and repairing and servicing various military equipment, operating that equipment or supervising the people that operate it. So there was a need to get people very quickly. Now, there's a blanket thing. If you had a degree or some sort of a qualification, you automatically were given the rank of an officer, or in many instances, given the rank of an officer and so on. But then you had to deliver as best you could. So what happened was when the war, when they were doing all this hiring and conscripting for the war, they would look at something called natural aptitude. So, okay, we're not going to get qualified people. We just need too many people too quickly. We're not going to get qualified people. So we'll look for the people who are most able, those who have the natural aptitude, those who are a quick study, who pick it up and they can run with it and they can be effective, or the most effective we can find. So we'll look at natural aptitude. Now, that attitude about looking for and identifying natural aptitude quickly and then encouraging it and supporting it and so on, was still in the education system when I went to school. Certainly in early school. By mid-high school, it was starting to go away. And what we see today is the equity programs were beginning to replace them. And natural aptitude, there had to be a baseline of education. You had to be literate, and you had to have a certain amount of sort of built-in intelligence to, the more intelligent the person, the greater their natural aptitude seemed to be. The two went hand in hand. Not that it was always that way or exclusively that way, but it was rarely otherwise. Now, I remember there were kids that I thought were pretty dumb, but they were great at painting or drawing or something like that. So it didn't mean that somebody wasn't good at anything, but natural aptitude was something. And I remember teachers encouraging it. They would say, "Hey, Billy Bob, you're really quick with numbers. Why don't we have this? Here's a book on statistics. I suggest you read that." So they were always trying to find what your natural aptitude was. I remember a kid in my class had this natural aptitude for music. Another was this other kid was a really good singer, had a great voice that always landed perfectly on the note, and that kid was encouraged to do extra music and singing classes. There was always this thing about finding a natural aptitude and encouraging it, or certainly that I came across at least. And I always came away thinking that was not through conditioning, but seemed like a good idea. If people were naturally good at something, why not encourage them to go further with that? And that then most likely, now there were things like, if somebody was good at say, painting or something like that. Now that may not be a very helpful career sort of path to take, but it didn't mean they shouldn't be encouraged in it. And then okay, you're good at painting. How can we apply that to something that may offer a possible career for you? And so even that thought was going on at the time, but created a wildcard effect insofar as you didn't know what someone's natural aptitude would be or how they would behave under certain circumstances. Now, I've seen people who are technically and organisationally go, quite good, but under pressure they just fall to pieces. So that's another level of determination in natural aptitude. Some people withstand pressure quite well, others not so much. Also, there's some that are hard to tell. Some people are going crazy inside, their heart's beating at 5,000 beats a second. But from looking at their face and their body movements, you'd never know it. Other people who are staying reasonably calm, have a look of great concern on their face, even though they're managing the situation quite well. Now, this idea of merit and thus the wildcard and aptitude and the wildcard effects that come from it played a huge role in not only education, but in as much as they had to watch you to see what natural aptitude you might have, but also occurred in employment. I remember one of the earlier jobs, this is like a kid, I'm still at school at this point, one of the earlier jobs I had in some bullshit warehouse or something like that. I was one of the few people, they only hired a few kids over the Christmas, summer holiday type break. Because remember, Christmas and summer happened together in Australia. And most of the people there were minimally literate, and they'd left school at 12 years old, and that type of thing. And so, because I was literate and I had some basic grounding use of computers, this was in very early days of computing. Next thing you know, I knew I was being made the operations supervisor or something on the days I was in. And even though I was only a casual kid, purely because they thought, hey, shit, you understand numbers, you're good at mathematics and arithmetic, you can read and write, you're literate, and you know about how to use these machines. So, wow, you're it, buddy. And so purely on the basis of aptitude and merit, aptitude that I picked up this stuff, but merit in as much as, if you know this, you don't. There was none of this. Well, where's your certification? You have a certificate? Well, wait a minute, just before we do this, let's just check to make sure we've got enough black lesbians on the payroll. Let's consider the equity of there was none of that bullshit. There was, can you do it? Now, if I couldn't do it, they'd have kicked me off it, but can you do it? Now, the same, if I look at sort of a lot of the employment that I've gained over the years, it's been because of aptitude, merit type issues. So, or the wildcard effect. I mean, what the first corporate job I got, I was probably 4th or 5th on their choice list. But the first guy, turned them down or didn't want the job. The next guy demanded, silly money. The next guy, and then something happened while they were umming and ahhing. They just hired me, but they'd re-advertised the role, but then the accountants came, and the budget for hiring someone expires, tomorrow. So you either hire someone now or you have 12 months before we re-include the headcount in the budget. So there's something of a panic. I was the only candidate really there, the only guy left standing. A bit like this a starring movie role or something where all the people they want aren't available. So Jack Nicholson gets one flew over the cuckoo's nest and makes him a huge star, even though he was 3rd or 4th down the list. And it's this same sort of thing. Holy crap, he's the only guy left standing. Well, we better hire him then, otherwise we'll have nobody. And they hired me then with I was like 22 or something. They hired me with some reluctance, and they. I got the boss gave me this morning, you better shape up or you're out on the street. I'm going to kick your ass out the door. And Well, I got all this heavy finger wagging bullshit, which at the time scared the pants off me, by the way. But nonetheless, it worked out very well. I was there for years, and became a big star and all the good stuff. But the point was the rando wildcard merit effect kicked in. Now, in another instance, again, I was probably one of the lesser candidates, but because of the political intrigues and machinations, all the various groups who wanting their boy to be given that this is like an EVP type, wanted their boy to have the job, they cancelled each other out. So I was the compromise candidate. I was the only one that had no support from anybody. Therefore was a political clean skin. And so I got the job, and again became a big success and all that sort of stuff. And this was happening continually in a number of ways. Also in the people I was hiring, I was looking for people that would demonstrate the get up and go, the commitment, the natural aptitude, and where I would think, okay, they can solve the sort of problems, or on a prima facie basis, I think they can solve the sort of problems. I didn't care. Not that their credentials were relevant, by the way, it wasn't. But I didn't need to, I could make the judgment, is this person likely to succeed in this job, given my understanding of its requirements? And having worked my way up through the ranks, I had a pretty clear understanding. And this is another wild card of aptitude. While you're learning the business and you're sort of working your way through the ranks, you're being, I don't know, tested maybe as a word, but you're being exposed to aptitude considerations. Can you do it? Can you pick up? Can you understand what's needed? Can you appreciate the problems and solve them and overcome them and deal with them and so on? So all of this has a wildcard effect through an overall umbrella of merit. This is what the globalists have got rid of, which is why nothing works anymore. Why when you go into the takeout food shop, all you get is snotty attitude and people arguing with you. Or when I mentioned in a takeout food shop that there was no one who spoke English in the shop, the first thing they come back with is, "Oh, are you a racist?" That's the first thing. I mean, they don't know any English and they can't do their job, but they know the word racist. That they can throw out of it. So all you get is attitude, piss poor service, and overpriced crap to eat. So, and this is at any level, whether it be at service, whether you go in to get technical support for something, and I'm going to do a video on that soon, all this sort of stuff, because of the predetermined outcome. Everything must be a predetermined outcome. And most of the hiring, if they're not hiring black lesbians or something, if it's certainly white people, then you have to be working for a direct competitor of ours doing the same job with that qualification and that. But the qualifications are being given out on an affirmative action basis, so no one actually is qualified. The fact that you're doing that job or supposedly hold that position and title in another company doesn't mean you're actually doing the job well or anything like that. So you can go into any organization now and find the entire management team is now made up of black lesbians, none of whom have got the job on merit. But you then look at the predetermined controlled conditions. All their revenue comes from government contracts. They don't have to be good or effective or useful or anything other than fucking hopeless at their jobs because of this predetermined. So the globalists want a world of controlled outcomes where they have absolutely predictable and controlled outcomes for them through monopolies, oligopolies, and so on. Whether it's in food or whether it's in services, construction, doesn't matter. Education, they want those controlled outcomes. And to get the controlled outcomes, again, media, facts and truth and accuracy and merit and the wildcard effect of aptitude and so on, all that has to be squeezed out of the system. So it's now the ticker box bland bullshit that we have now that delivers far, far below, much less than optimal outcomes, because there's no striving for the best or the most capable. While you're striving for the best and most capable, which does leave people behind if they're not hardworking or bright or don't have the aptitude, does leave people behind. But so does the current system leave people. The difference is the people left behind in the predictable and managed controlled outcome situation are the most capable people who are being left behind, whereas the least capable people are the ones left behind previously. Was that in a moral sort of touchy-feely way unjust? Well, in its way it was, but it delivers a better society for all of us in the end. Not an equity society, but a better society with more efficiency, better delivery of services, more outcomes, so that when you go to the doctor to get the heart surgery or the brain surgery or whatever, you're getting the very best there is. Whereas now, the likelihood that you're going to get some affirmative action black lesbian doing the job hasn't got a fucking clue. It's just part of the controlled outcomes. So the wildcard effect. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.